not allow any outside influence to cause issues in our home. If the issues are going to happen, it needs to be between me and you, and not anyone else influencing.
You always want to find yourself on the side of your spouse. Even if your spouse is wrong and they're way out of order, you don't give your family the opportunity to see, dissension in the ranks.
Right.
Does your family hate your marriage? Here's what you should do.
Stop allowing your in-laws and your family to interfere in your marriage. That is not okay.
Yeah, we have to be very intentional about this because, your family is people that you care about, that you love, that have had a huge influence over your life. And you want to be very careful about how much access you give them, to your marriage relationship and to your partner and things of that nature.
Right. So we want to talk about four recommendations that we have to help you limit your family causing damage or interfering in your marriage at all. So number one
thing is you want to make sure that you prioritize your spouse. And so
number one,
whether it's, in dealing with family, externally or family internally in your house, your spouse should always be your number one person no matter what.
Yeah, no matter what. I think we can't get comfortable letting our family be priority over our spouse because our spouse is the one we have the most intimate relationship with. Your spouse is the person you're going to do life with forever. You're going to have children with. So they need to be priority over your family.
Absolutely. And, like I was saying, people get advice from fathers, mothers, about what they should do. And, you want to make sure that you judge the advice that they give you based on their own experiences. But also just taking into account that this person knows, a version of your spouse based on the presentation that they have come in contact with. Whereas you yourself, are touching and interacting with your spouse continuously. And so you have a relationship with them that you really can't explain or duplicate for somebody else to understand in certain situations.
Right. You're going to spend most of your life, if you're married in this long term, with your spouse, not your family. And the second one we want to, highlight is set boundaries as far as what you can share with your family or your in-laws between you and your spouse about your marriage, because they don't need to know everything.
Correct. And also,
that's not healthy.
Goes back to prioritizing is, you want to prioritize your spouse's feelings, your spouse's emotions, what they may or may not want you to share,
right.
And have those conversations individually, as far as, from husband to wife, to understand, hey, this is what I feel comfortable with. I don't want you to share this with your mom or your dad or family members, whatever the case may be, so that there's an understanding. Because there's so many different ways that these types of conversations can go as far as influences, outside influences on your marriage can be very impactful, positively and negatively, depending on the way that you kind of put the information out there.
Right. And keep in mind, you may say something to your family and you and your spouse have kind of dealt with it and you guys are in a better place. But a lot of times a lot of family are not mature enough to forgive your spouse and see them in a healthy space, because now they're keeping them in that negative light.
And it's not their responsibility to do that.
Exactly. Now you moved on. We hand holding back in love, and they looking at your spouse like, we don't like this person, So that's why it's very important to be mindful as far as setting boundaries, as far as what you can share and what you cannot share between each other.
Yeah, and then just when you have also the topic of in-laws versus your blood family,
right?
You want to be very careful about maybe like me not going and talking to your mom like Harika is just whatever, or like Harika reaching out to my father or something like that and saying I'm having this particular problem. Like some of that can be healthy, and I don't want to say that you like eliminate that out of your situation, but you just want to be very delicate about how far you go with it, right, and how much access you give, whether it's in-laws or direct family, to your intimate parts of your marriage relationship.
Key word you said, access.
Yeah.
Every external people outside of your husband and your kids should not have so much access to your information, your privacy. That's between you and your husband and what we want to share as far as what we got going on in our home. So set boundaries with your family members as far as you can't sleep over, or you can't stay late, or you can't just pop up on us, or you can't just jump in our conversations that we're having. It's not healthy for them to feel so comfortable to just intrude. You gotta have those hard conversations. Even mom, okay? I know we love mom. We love dad too, of course, but mom can sometimes interfere a little bit too much, and we gotta be careful of that, So set boundaries with your family, because it only strengthens your marriage that you're both on the same page, and we do not allow any outside influence to cause issues in our home. If the issues are gonna happen, it needs to be between me and you, and not anyone else influencing that.
Because we're going to be the main ones that are working on figuring it out and navigating it going forward.
Right.
So point number 1 is going to be prioritize your spouse. Point number 2 is setting boundaries as far as what information can be shared with your family.
Right.
And then point number 3 is a little bit of a iteration, but just the next level. We want to go a little bit deeper into point 3, set boundaries with your family. Mm-hmm. And so when she talks about like her mom, I have to be careful that if maybe her mom is getting a little bit outside of what Harika would feel comfortable with, that I don't kind of play into being on mom's side.
That part.
Because like point number 1 says, I have to prioritize my spouse. So let me not get comfortable with, oh, she's giving Harika a hard time. That's what I really want her to do.
Jump on the bandwagon.
And so I jump on the bandwagon. I get myself, more in the doghouse, where I really care about, the relationship, and where my priority is really most dedicated. So you have to be very careful about that. Yeah. And then also just setting boundaries about, how people can handle you. Mm-hmm. When it comes to like family events, like, Thanksgiving, Christmas, different things like that, there's certain expectations. And you have to set those boundaries and say, hey, we're not going to be able to drive all the way to, whatever state, or, we're not going to be able to show up to every event, things of that nature. Just kind of making sure that communication is put out there up front, so that it's understood and there's no, hurt feelings or expectations. Like, we're not going to be able to do all these things that you're expecting us to do, but we can do these things, and we want to make sure that you understand.
Right. Or bad blood, because the thought is the spouse is influencing them to do something different, because your spouse was available when they were single to go to all these things, and now that we're married and I have to move differently, I have kids, I have a budget, I have a career, I have things that's going on, I have to do what's best for my family. I can't show up to everything. So sometimes that causes some bad blood, and the assumption that's the spouse that's causing that. You have to communicate with your family and set boundaries and say what I can and cannot do. And it's not because of my spouse, it's because I have a family, and I have to make decisions to make sure that we're all on the right, on the right page.
Yeah. And you always want to find yourself on the side of your spouse. Even if your spouse is wrong and they're way out of order, you don't give your family the opportunity to see, dissension in the ranks. Right. Not to say that they are not in support or they want to see you guys be successful, but you don't want to kind of set a precedent that's unhealthy. No. You want to always be on your spouse's side, and if you have to come back and have a one-on-one conversation after the fact in private and say, hey, babe, you went a little bit too far, or, emotions got the best of you, whatever like that, and be willing to take that feedback from your spouse as well. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that have your best interests at heart, and you want to always make sure that you're, lending an ear to what it is that they have to say and what they want to share with you.
And I think that kind of hits our final point, which is point 4. Communicate how you feel to each other. Like, y'all need to be on the same page. It can't be, I'm mad, my family knows I'm mad, you don't know, they mad at you. That's not healthy. Yeah. We need to share how we're feeling with each other, so that way there's no surprises. No one can say to me, oh, did you know you did that to Charles? What? I had no idea. I live with you.
Or did you know that Charles felt this way about what you did?
Right. Or did you know that Charles felt this way about something that you did, and I had no clue, but he spoke to someone else. We need to know. We shouldn't have any surprises when we're communicating with each other or external people. Nothing should be a surprise for us. We should know how each other feels, and we should be able to have a safe space to share what's going on. So, don't let your family write your story. It's your story, it's your marriage, and you write it, you and your spouse.
Yeah, it's just, really prioritizing, making sure that, no matter what your situation is, people have some siblings that are closer than others,
Yeah.
some relationships with parents that are closer than others, whatever the case may be. There's different, there's a layer or a spectrum of how close that different people are in different situations with parents and family and stuff like that. But you just want to always make sure that the prioritization of your spouse's feelings and how they want to have things go and the way that they're going to feel most comfortable is the thing that's the highest priority. And then everybody else kind of falls in line in the pecking order as necessary going forward.